Hello, my good friends. How are you today? May God bless you all. I will not introduce anything. You guys watch the video and feel it. Then let's evaluate together. The Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport in Atlanta was a madhouse. It always was this time of year, right before the holidays, when every gate was packed with frazzled travelers hauling overstuffed suitcases and screaming kids. The air smelled like burnt coffee from the Starbucks kiosk and that weird, sterile tang of industrial cleaner. Overhead, a garbled voice crackled through the PA system, announcing delays in a tone that suggested even the announcer was over it. Jack Harper stood in the middle of it all, a 6'2" tower of frustration in a wrinkled Armani suit, bouncing a sobbing 3-year-old on his knee. "Come on, Ethan, buddy," he muttered, his voice tight with exhaustion. "What's the deal? You love planes. You're always pointing at 'em in the sky." His son didn't answer, just wailed louder, his tiny face scrunched up and red as a tomato, snot dripping onto Jack's tie. Ethan's little fists clenched the expensive fabric like it was a lifeline, and Jack winced. That suit had cost him $2,000, but right now it was just a $2,000 snot rag. People were starting to stare. A woman in a yoga pants and a namaste hoodie shot him a look that screamed, "Control your kid." A guy with a buzz cut and a camouflage backpack muttered something under his breath as he shuffled past. Jack's jaw tightened. He was used to commanding boardrooms, closing million-dollar deals with a handshake, firing execs without blinking. But this? A screaming toddler in a crowded airport lounge. This was a battlefield he didn't know how to win. He shifted Ethan to his other arm, digging through his leather carry-on with one hand. "Where's that damn dinosaur toy?" he grumbled. Ethan's cries hit a new pitch, sharp enough to make a nearby teenager yank out her earbuds and glare. Jack exhaled hard through his nose. He was one meltdown away from losing it himself. And then, like some kind of angel dropping out of the chaos, a soft voice cut through the noise. "Hey, would you like some help?" Jack's head snapped up. Kneeling in front of Ethan was a woman, late 20s maybe, with warm hazel eyes that crinkled at the corners like she smiled a lot. Her dark hair fell in loose waves around her face, brushing the collar of a faded green sweater that looked like it had been washed 100 times. She wore jeans and scuffed sneakers, nothing flashy, but there was something about her, something easy, grounded. She didn't look like she belonged in this mess of stressed-out travelers, yet here she was, calm as a summer lake. Ethan hiccuped, his sobs faltering as he blinked at her. Jack hesitated. He didn't do help. Not from strangers, not from anyone. He'd built his tech empire in Seattle from the ground up, brick by stubborn brick, and he didn't lean on people. But right now, with his kid turning his suit into a modern art project and his sanity hanging by a thread, he was out of moves. "If you think you can work some magic," he said, his tone dry, "be my guest." She grinned, a quick, lopsided thing that lit up her whole face. "Hey, little man," she said, her voice soft but playful, as she reached into a canvas tote slung over her shoulder. "You like animals?" Ethan sniffled, nodding hesitantly, his big blue eyes still wet with tears. She pulled out a small stuffed bear, its fur worn but clean, and wiggled it in front of him. "This is Buddy. He's real good at keeping secrets. Want to tell him what's wrong?" Ethan stared at the bear, then at her, then back at the bear. Slowly, like he wasn't sure he could trust it, he reached out. His chubby fingers closed around the toy, and he hugged it to his chest. The crying didn't stop all at once. It softened into little hiccups, then quiet sniffles. Jack watched, jaw slack, as his son went from a human siren to a snuffling lump in under a minute. What the hell just happened? The woman plopped down in the empty seat next to them, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "Flying can be tough sometimes, huh?" she said, glancing at Ethan. "Or maybe you just needed a friend." Ethan buried his face in the bear, and for the first time in what felt like hours, the lounge wasn't echoing with his screams. Jack let out a long breath, running a hand through his dark hair. It was sticking up in all directions now, thanks to the sweat and stress. "I don't know how you did that," he said, "but thank you. Seriously." She laughed, a light, easy sound that cut through the airport din like a breeze. "No biggie. I used to work at a daycare back in Nashville." "You pick up a few tricks." She stuck out her hand, her grip firm but warm when he shook it. "Grace Miller." "Jack Harper," he said, surprised at how natural it felt to talk to her. Ethan peeked up from the bear, his tear-streaked face smudged but calm. He tugged at Grace's sleeve with one hand, still clutching Buddy with the other. "Miss Gracie?" he mumbled, shy but curious. Her whole face lit up like someone had flipped a switch. "Yeah, Buddy," she said, leaning down to his level. "You want to sit with us for a bit?" Ethan nodded, scooting closer to her on Jack's lap. Jack raised an eyebrow, caught off guard by how fast his kid had latched onto this stranger. "He doesn't usually warm up to people like that," he said. Grace glanced at him, her eyes twinkling with something he couldn't quite place. "Only if you're cool with it," she said, nodding toward Ethan. "I don't want to step on any toes." Jack didn't even think twice. "Please," he said, half laughing. "You've already saved my ass today." They shifted so Grace could settle in next to them, Ethan sandwiched between like he'd claimed her as his new best friend. The lounge buzzed around them, announcements blaring, suitcases clattering, but for the first time all day, Jack felt like he could breathe. Grace pulled a pack of goldfish crackers from her bag, offering some to Ethan, who grabbed a handful with a tiny grin. "So," Jack said, leaning back in the stiff airport chair, "what's your story? You're not from around here, I'm guessing." "Nashville," she said, popping a cracker into her mouth. "Heading to Miami to see some family. You?" "Same," he said. "Well, Miami for a meeting. And this guy." He ruffled Ethan's hair, earning a giggle. "Single dad life, you know." Grace tilted her head, studying him. "Tough gig, huh?" "You have no idea," he said, smirking. "I can negotiate a merger blindfolded, but this one, he's got me beat half the time." She laughed again, and damn if it didn't make the whole stupid airport feel less suffocating. "Kids are easy," she said. "It's the grown-ups that'll drive you nuts." "Fair," he said, and for a second they just sat there, grinning at each other like a couple of idiots. Ethan munched his crackers, oblivious, smearing crumbs all over Buddy the bear. The PA crackled again. "Flight 237 to Miami, delayed 1 hour." Jack groaned, but Grace just shrugged. "More time to hang out, I guess." "Yeah," he said, surprising himself with how much he meant it. "Guess so." They talked, really talked, for the next half hour. She told him about teaching preschool, how she loved the chaos of finger paint and story time. He found himself spilling stuff he didn't usually share. How he'd ended up with Ethan after his ex bailed. How he was still figuring out how to be a dad and a CEO without screwing it all up. Grace listened, nodding like she got it. No judgment in those hazel eyes. When the boarding call finally came, Ethan grabbed her hand. "Miss Gracie, sit with us," he said, his voice all big and hopeful. Jack chuckled. "Kid's got a point. You're stuck with us now." Grace hesitated, then smiled. "All right, twist my arm." As they shuffled toward the gate, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just some random airport meet-cute. Something was shifting, something he couldn't control. And for once, he didn't mind. Hey, if you're wondering where Jack and Grace are headed from here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below. What do you think? Do they have a shot? Or is this just a layover fling? Let me know. The airport lounge had been a war zone, but stepping into Brew and Bean, a hole-in-the-wall coffee joint just outside Hartsfield, Jackson, felt like crossing into neutral territory. The place was tiny, maybe 10 tables tops, with chipped wooden chairs and a chalkboard menu scribbled with specials like pumpkin spice latte and Mama's pecan pie. The air smelled like roasted beans and cinnamon, a welcome break from the stale airport funk. Jack Harper slumped into a seat by the window. Ethan perched on his lap, while Grace Miller slid into the chair across from them, her canvas tote thumping onto the floor. "Thanks for this," Jack said, nodding toward the steaming espresso in front of him. "I owe you one. Big time." Grace waved him off, her hazel eyes catching the dim light from the Edison bulbs overhead. "Don't sweat it. I wasn't about to let you drown out there." She sipped her caramel latte, leaving a faint foam mustache on her upper lip that she wiped away with a quick swipe. Ethan, still clutching his new pal Buddy the Bear, giggled at her from across the table. Jack smirked. "You're good with him. Like, scary good." "Years of wrangling preschoolers," she said, shrugging. "You learned to roll with the punches." She pulled a pack of goldfish crackers from her bag, Ethan's new favorite, and slid it toward him. "Here, bud. Don't get crumbs all over your dad's fancy suit, okay?" Ethan grinned, his chubby fingers diving into the bag. "Miss Gracie, you're funny," he said, crumbs already tumbling onto Jack's slacks. Jack groaned, but there was a flicker of a smile tugging at his mouth. This kid was a tornado, and somehow Grace was the eye of the storm. "So, Miami," Jack said, leaning back and cradling his coffee. "Family stuff, you said?" "Yeah," Grace replied, her tone light, but her fingers tapping a quick rhythm on her cup. A nervous tick Jack clocked right away. "Just visiting some folks. Nothing big. You?" "Business," he said. "Got a meeting with some investors tomorrow, and this little guy's tagging along 'cause..." He hesitated, then shrugged. "Well, it's just us." Grace tilted her head, studying him over the rim of her latte. "Single dad life, huh? That's a full-time gig and then some." "Tell me about it," Jack said, rubbing the back of his neck. "I mean, I can negotiate a merger blindfolded, but figuring out why he's crying at 3 a.m.? That's a whole different beast." She laughed, that easy, breezy sound that made the room feel less cramped. "Kids don't come with a manual. You're doing all right, though." He's still in one piece. "Barely," Jack said, smirking. "His mom, Sarah, she's not in the picture. Took off when he was a baby. Said she wasn't cut out for it. So it's been me and him ever since. Grace's smile softened, something warm flickering in her eyes. That's tough. But you're here, keeping it together. That's what counts. Jack looked down at Ethan, who was now doodling on a napkin with a crayon Grace had fished out of her bag. Yeah, he said quietly. I try. The conversation flowed like they'd known each other longer than an hour. Grace told him about her preschool days in Nashville, how she'd once had to fish a kid out of a finger paint bucket, how she loved watching their little brains light up when they figured something out. Jack found himself opening up more than he meant to, about the late nights at the office, the guilt of missing Ethan's first steps because of a board meeting. She didn't judge, just listened, nodding like she got it. Ethan, meanwhile, was in his own world, scribbling what looked like a lopsided plane on the napkin. Look, Daddy, he said, holding it up. It's our plane. Nice one, Bud, Jack said, ruffling his hair. Grace leaned over, inspecting the masterpiece. That's awesome, Ethan, she said. You're going to be a pilot someday, huh? Maybe, Ethan said, scrunching his nose. Or a dinosaur guy. A paleontologist, Jack corrected, chuckling. Big dreams for a little man. Grace grinned. Why not both? Fly planes and dig up T-Rex bones. Ethan's eyes went wide. Yeah, he said, bouncing in Jack's lap. Miss Gracie, you come too. Jack raised an eyebrow. Looks like you've got a fan. He's easy to like, she said, winking at Ethan. Right, Bud? The barista called out a to-go order, snapping them back to reality. Jack glanced at his watch. 40 minutes until boarding. Guess we should head back, he said, though part of him didn't want to move. This little bubble, the coffee, the crackers, the way Grace made Ethan laugh. It felt good. Too good. They grabbed their stuff and shuffled back to the gate, Ethan clinging to Grace's hand like she was his new favorite person. When they checked their tickets, Jack blinked. Wait, you're on 237 too? Grace laughed, holding up her boarding pass. Small world, huh? Miss Gracie, sit with us, Ethan said, tugging her sleeve so hard she nearly tripped. Jack smirked. Kid's not letting you off the hook. You cool with that? Grace hesitated, then nodded. All right, you win, little man. The plane was one of those packed Southwest flights. Open seating, every row jammed with people juggling carry-ons and elbowing for space. Jack snagged 3 seats near the back, Ethan in the middle, Grace by the window. The kid was buzzing with excitement, pressing his nose to the glass as the plane taxied down the runway. We're gonna fly, he squealed, but then came takeoff. The engines roared, the cabin shook, and Ethan's face crumpled. Daddy, my ears, he cried, clutching his head. His wails cut through the hum of the plane, loud enough to make the guy in front of them turn around with a scowl. Jack fumbled with his bag, digging for the pacifier Ethan hadn't used in months. Hang on, Bud. I got you. Here, Grace said, her voice calm but firm. She leaned over, cupping Ethan's face gently. Hey, little man, look at me. We're gonna sing, okay? Before Jack could process it, she started humming. A soft, lilting tune, something about a river and a moon. Her voice wasn't loud, but it wrapped around Ethan like a blanket. She rocked him slightly, her hand brushing his hair, and slowly, miraculously, His cries faded to whimpers, then silence. His eyelids drooped, and he slumped against her shoulder, out cold, still gripping Buddy. Jack stared, his mouth half open. "You're kidding me," he whispered. "How do you do that?" Grace smiled, a little sheepish, as she adjusted Ethan against her. "Old daycare trick. Works every time." He shook his head, a mix of awe and gratitude washing over him. "You're a damn wizard, Grace Miller." She laughed quietly, careful not to wake Ethan. "Just practice. You'll get the hang of it." The plane leveled off, the seatbelt sign dinging off, but Jack couldn't take his eyes off her. The way she'd stepped in, no hesitation, like she'd known Ethan forever, it hit him somewhere deep. He wasn't used to this. People didn't just fit into his life like that. Not with his schedule, his walls, his mess. But here she was, cradling his kid like it was the most natural thing in the world. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the hum of the engines filling the space. Grace glanced out the window at the clouds, then back at him. "So, Miami, you sticking around after your meeting?" "Just a couple days," he said. "Gotta get back to Seattle. You?" "Same," she said. But there was that tap, tap, tap of her fingers again, like she wasn't telling the whole story. "Family stuff, you know." He nodded, letting it slide. "Well, if you're free tomorrow night, maybe we could grab dinner, you know, as a thank you." Grace's eyes flicked to Ethan, then back to him. "Maybe," she said, her smile cautious but real. "Let's see how it goes." "Fair enough," Jack said, leaning back. The plane droned on, carrying them toward Miami, and maybe something else. He wasn't sure what yet, but he knew one thing. He wasn't ready to let this, whatever this was, end at the gate. "Hey, how about that little miracle on the plane? If you're dying to know if Grace says yes to dinner, or if Miami's got more surprises up its sleeve, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment. What's your guess? Is this the start of something big or just a pit stop? Let me know." The sun was dipping low over Miami Beach, painting the sky in streaks of orange and pink, when Jack Harper pushed open the door to the Salty Crab. It was one of those laid-back seafood joints, wooden tables scratched up from years of use, a jukebox in the corner pumping out Jimmy Buffett, and the salty tang of the ocean drifting in through open windows. Ethan bounced ahead, still clutching Buddy the bear, while Grace trailed behind, her sneakers squeaking on the weathered floorboards. "Table for 3, Jack told the hostess, a girl with a sunburned nose and a name tag that read Kayla. She led them to a spot by the window, where the view stretched out to the waves lapping at the shore. Jack slid into a chair, Ethan scrambling up next to him, while Grace settled across, her hazel eyes catching the last of the daylight. "This place smells like heaven," Grace said, sniffing the air, fried shrimp, garlic butter, and a hint of lime. "You been here before?" "Once," Jack said, handing Ethan a kid's menu with crayons. "Last time I was in Miami. Figured it'd be a good spot to say thanks for, you know, saving my sanity yesterday." She grinned, that lopsided smile that made his chest do a weird little flip. "You're welcome, though I think Ethan's the real MVP here." She winked at the kid, who was already scribbling a fish on the paper menu. "Miss Gracie, look," Ethan said, holding it up. "It's a shark." "Man, that's a killer shark," she said, leaning over to inspect it. "You're an artist, bud." Jack chuckled, watching them. It had been, what, 2 days? And Ethan was already glued to her like she was family. The kid didn't trust Easy, not after Sarah bailed, but with Grace, it was like he'd flipped a switch. And Jack? He wasn't far behind. There was something about her, those easy laughs, the way she didn't flinch at his mess, that made him want to keep her around. The waitress swung by, dropping off a basket of hush puppies and taking their order. Fish tacos for Jack, shrimp po' boy for Grace, and chicken nuggets for Ethan. They dug in, the conversation flowing like the tide outside. Grace told him about growing up in Nashville, country music on every corner, summers chasing fireflies. Jack shared bits of his Seattle life, rainy days, tech bros, and the chaos of running a company while juggling a toddler. "You ever miss it?" Grace asked, popping a hush puppy in her mouth. The whole no kid, no responsibility thing. "Sometimes," he admitted, wiping Ethan's ketchup-smeared hands with a napkin. "But then this guy looks at me with those big eyes, and I'm done for." She smiled, soft and real. "He's lucky to have you." "Nah," Jack said, shaking his head. "I'm the lucky one." Ethan piped up, oblivious to the mushy stuff. "Miss Gracie, you're my best friend," he said, swinging his legs under the table. Grace's whole face lit up. "Aw, bud, you're mine too." Jack was about to say something, maybe something dumb and sappy, when his phone buzzed on the table. He glanced at the screen. Tyler Brooks, his best friend since college, a Miami lawyer with a knack for showing up at the worst times. Jack swiped to answer. "Hey man, what's up? Where you at?" Tyler's voice crackled through, loud enough that Grace raised an eyebrow. "I'm in the neighborhood. Thought I'd swing by." "Salty crab," Jack said. "You know it?" "Be there in 10, Tyler said, and hung up. Jack pocketed the phone. "Old buddy of mine," he explained. "Lives down here. Hope you don't mind." "More the merrier," Grace said, though her fingers started that nervous tap-tap-tap on the table again. 10 minutes later, Tyler strode in, 6 feet of tan muscle in a polo shirt and Ray-Bans, looking like he just stepped off a yacht. He clapped Jack on the shoulder, hard enough to jostle Ethan, who giggled. "Well, damn, Harper," Tyler said, grinning. "You clean up nice for a guy who's been crying help all week." "Shut up," Jack said, smirking. "Ethan, this is Uncle Tyler. Grace, Tyler Brooks." Tyler slid into the empty chair, sizing Grace up with a look Jack didn't like. "Hey, nice to meet you," he said, but his tone had an edge. "So, you're the airport hero, huh?" Grace laughed, brushing it off. "Just good timing, I guess." They ordered another round of beers, Bud Light for the guys, a Corona for Grace, and Tyler launched into a story about some client he'd just bailed out of a DUI. Jack half listened, keeping an eye on Ethan, who was now stacking hush puppies like a tower. But then Tyler leaned in, lowering his voice so Ethan wouldn't catch it. "So, what's the deal with her?" he said, nodding toward Grace. "She know you're loaded?" Jack's jaw tightened. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Come on, man," Tyler said, smirking. "She's too perfect. Shows up out of nowhere, charms the kid, now she's here eating shrimp with you? What's her angle?" "She doesn't have an angle," Jack snapped, louder than he meant to. Grace's head turned, her smile faltering. "Everything okay?" she asked, her eyes flicking between them. "Yeah," Jack said, forcing a grin. "Just guy talk." But Grace wasn't dumb. She caught the vibe, and that tap, tap, tap on the table sped up. "I'm gonna hit the restroom," she said, sliding out of her chair. "Back in a sec." The second she was gone, Jack rounded on Tyler. "What the hell, man? You don't even know her." "Exactly," Tyler said, leaning back. "You don't either. I'm just looking out for you, bro. You've got a kid to think about, not to mention a bank account most people would kill for." "She's not like that," Jack said, his voice low and hard. "She's—" His phone buzzed again, cutting him off. A text this time, from a number he hadn't seen in 3 years. Sarah Evans. His stomach dropped. "In Miami. Need to see Ethan. Call me." Jack stared at the screen, the words blurring. Sarah, Ethan's mom, the woman who'd walked out without a backward glance, was here. Now. After all this time. "You good?" Tyler asked, frowning. "No," Jack muttered, shoving the phone in his pocket. "Not even close." Grace came back, sliding into her seat, but the air had shifted. She clocked it right away. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice careful. Jack opened his mouth to brush it off, but Tyler beat him to it. "Just making sure my boy's not getting played," he said, smirking at her. "No offense." Grace's face went still, then hard. "Played?" she said, her tone sharp. "I don't need anyone's money, Jack. I'm not here for that." "I know," Jack said, reaching for her hand. "He's just being an ass." "Maybe this was a mistake," she cut in, pulling back. She stood, grabbing her tote. "I don't do drama. Ethan, you be good, okay?" "Miss Gracie, don't go," Ethan said, his voice wobbling. "I'll see you around, bud," she said, forcing a smile. Then she was gone, the door swinging shut behind her. Jack glared at Tyler. "Nice work, dickhead." Tyler shrugged. "You'll thank me later." Jack didn't answer. He scooped Ethan up, the kid's crayons clattering to the floor, and stormed out after her. But by the time he hit the sidewalk, Grace was nowhere in sight. Just the sound of waves and the sting of salt air. His phone buzzed again, another text from Sarah. "Tomorrow. We need to talk." He stood there, Ethan clinging to his neck, the Miami night pressing in. Sarah was back. Grace was gone. And for the first time in years, Jack felt like he was losing control of everything that mattered. Whoa, talk about a curveball. Sarah's back. Grace is out the door. What's Jack gonna do now? Hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below. Do you think Tyler's right to be suspicious? Or is Sarah about to blow everything up? Let me know what you're thinking. The Miami sun was relentless, beating down on Zoo Miami like it had a personal vendetta. Jack Harper squinted against the glare, a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes as he pushed Ethan's stroller through the crowd. The air was thick with humidity, carrying the funky mix of sunscreen, popcorn, and something vaguely animal-ish, probably the giraffes they'd just passed. Ethan bounced in his seat, pointing at everything with sticky fingers still smeared from a melting popsicle. "Look, Daddy! Monkeys!" he squealed, nearly tipping the stroller as he leaned toward the enclosure. A pack of capuchins swung from branch to branch, chattering like they were plotting a jailbreak. "Yeah, bud, I see 'em," Jack said, forcing a grin. He was trying to keep it light, to give Ethan a good day after the mess at the Salty Crab 2 nights ago. Tyler's dumbass comments, Grace walking out, Sarah's texts. It was all still churning in his head, a storm he couldn't outrun. He'd texted Grace an apology yesterday, but no reply. And Sarah? She'd called this morning, saying she'd be at his hotel tomorrow. Jack's gut twisted just thinking about it. "Let's check out the lions next," he said, steering the stroller down a shaded path lined with palm trees. Ethan clapped, oblivious to the weight on his dad's shoulders. Jack envied that. The way kids could just be, no baggage, no second-guessing. They rounded a corner near the flamingo pond, all pink feathers and skinny legs, when Ethan bolted upright. "Miss Gracie!" he yelled, loud enough to make a couple of tourists jump. Jack froze. There she was, Grace Miller, standing 20 feet away with a gaggle of kids in neon camp t-shirts. She had a clipboard in one hand, a whistle around her neck, and that same green sweater tied around her waist. Her hair was up in a messy bun, strands sticking to her sweaty forehead. But she looked, damn it, like a lifeline he hadn't realized he'd been reaching for. Ethan wriggled free of the stroller straps, darting toward her before Jack could grab him. "Miss Gracie, hi!" he shouted, crashing into her legs. Grace blinked, then crouched down, her face breaking into a smile that hit Jack square in the chest. "Hey, little man," she said, ruffling his hair. "What are you doing here?" "Lions," Ethan said, bouncing. "And monkeys. You come see." Jack caught up, shoving his hands in his pockets to keep from fidgeting. "Hey," he said, his voice rougher than he meant it. "Didn't expect to run into you." Grace straightened, her smile fading into something cautious. "Yeah, same. I'm here with a summer camp group, volunteer thing." Her eyes flicked to Ethan, then back to him. "How's he holding up?" "Good," Jack said. "Better now, I guess." He nodded toward Ethan, who was tugging her hand like she was his personal tour guide. "Can she come, Daddy?" Ethan asked, big eyes pleading. Jack hesitated, then shrugged. "If she's up for it. No pressure." Grace bit her lip, glancing at the camp kids, 5 or 6 of them, all under 10, chasing each other around a picnic table. "I've got a break in 15, she said. "Meet you by the lions?" "Deal," Jack said, a flicker of relief loosening the knot in his gut. 15 minutes later, they were parked in front of the lion enclosure, the big cats sprawled out on rocks like they owned the place. Ethan pressed his face to the glass, whispering to Buddy about how lions were super cool. Grace showed up, sans clipboard, with a bottle of water and a faint sunburn across her nose. "Sorry about the other night," Jack said, jumping in before he lost his nerve. "Tyler's an idiot. I didn't mean for it to go down like that." Grace took a sip of water, her expression unreadable. "It's fine. I don't like being sized up like that, you know? I'm not after anything." "I know," he said, meeting her eyes. "I never thought you were." She nodded, slow, like she was testing the weight of his words. "Okay." Ethan saved them from the awkward silence, grabbing her hand. "Come see the baby lion," he said, dragging her toward the viewing platform. Jack followed, watching them. Grace laughing as Ethan mimicked a lion's roar, her guard slipping just enough to let him hope. They wandered the zoo for an hour, lions to elephants to the reptile house, where Ethan shrieked at a python thicker than Jack's arm. Grace was a natural, turning every exhibit into a game. How many stripes on that zebra? What's louder, a lion or a monkey? Ethan ate it up, and Jack couldn't help but notice how easy it felt, like she belonged there, with them. But then it happened. They were near the hippo pool, a crowded mess of strollers and selfie sticks, when Ethan slipped out of Jack's grip. "Hippos!" he yelled, darting toward the railing. Jack lunged, but the kid was fast, too fast. 1 second he was there, the next he was gone, swallowed by the sea of people. "Ethan!" Jack shouted, his voice cracking. His heart slammed against his ribs as he shoved through the crowd, scanning for that little blue t-shirt. "Ethan, where are you?" Grace was right behind him, her face pale. "He can't have gone far," she said, but her voice shook. "Split up. I'll check by the benches." Jack nodded, adrenaline pumping. He pushed past a guy with a giant pretzel, yelling Ethan's name over the zoo's chatter. His mind raced. Every horror story he'd ever heard about lost kids flashing like a neon sign. Not him. Not now. 5 minutes stretched into forever. Sweat stung his eyes, his throat raw from shouting. He was about to lose it when Grace's voice cut through the noise. "Jack! Over here!" He spun around. She was by the hippo tank, waving him over, and there was Ethan, sitting on the ground, body clutched tight, tears streaking his dirty face. A zoo worker in a khaki vest stood next to him, radio in hand. Jack ran, dropping to his knees and pulling Ethan into his arms. "God damn it, bud. You scared the hell out of me," he said, his voice breaking. Ethan sobbed into his shoulder, small and trembling. "He was just sitting here," the worker said. "Said he wanted to see the hippos up close." "Thanks," Jack managed, holding Ethan tighter. Grace knelt beside them, her hand on Ethan's back, her breath shaky. "You okay, little man?" she asked, brushing his hair from his eyes. Ethan nodded, sniffling. "I got lost, but Buddy stayed with me." Jack looked at Grace, her face flushed with relief, and something clicked. "I can't lose him," he said, barely above a whisper. "Not him too." "We found him," she said, her voice steady now. "Together." They sat there for a minute, the crowd buzzing around them, until Ethan's sobs faded to hiccups. Jack stood, lifting him into his arms, and Grace followed, dusting off her jeans. "You're a rock star. You know that?" he said to her. She shrugged, a small smile tugging at her lips. Team effort? But the moment didn't last. A woman approached, tall, blonde, with a backpack and a vibe that screamed free spirit. "Grace!" she called, waving. "There you are!" Grace turned, her smile tightening. "Hannah, hey!" Hannah Carter, Grace's old co-worker from Nashville, grinned, oblivious to the tension. "I've been texting you. Got a sec?" Jack shifted Ethan in his arms. "We'll head to the snack bar," he said. "Give you some space." Grace nodded, but her eyes lingered on him, like she wasn't ready to let go yet. "I'll catch up." At the snack bar, Jack bought Ethan a slushie, his mind spinning. Grace was back in his orbit, but something was off. He could feel it. When she found them 10 minutes later, her face was different, distant, guarded. "Everything okay?" he asked, handing Ethan a napkin. "Yeah," she said, too quick. "Hannah's just..." She's got this project, teaching gig in Costa Rica. Wants me to come along. Jack's stomach dropped. You thinking about it? She hesitated, tapping her fingers on the table. I don't know. Maybe. She looked at Ethan, then at him. I need a couple days to figure it out. Okay, he said, though it felt like a punch. Take your time. She nodded. But as she walked back to her camp group, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that he was losing her all over again. Ethan slurped his slushie, oblivious, while Jack stared at the horizon, the Miami heat pressing down like a warning. Talk about a roller coaster. Ethan's safe, but Grace might be slipping away. What's next for these three? Hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below. Do you think she'll stay or take off for Costa Rica? Let me know what you're betting on. The balcony of Jack Harper's suite at the Miami Marriott overlooked the Atlantic, a sprawl of dark water glinting under the moon. The breeze carried the sharp bite of salt and the distant hum of South Beach nightlife, but inside the air was heavy, stifling, like the calm before a storm. Jack leaned against the railing, a half-empty beer dangling from his hand, his jaw tight. Ethan was asleep in the bedroom, sprawled across the king-sized bed with Buddy the bear tucked under his arm. The kid had crashed hard after the zoo, but Jack couldn't shake the day's weight, or the text from Sarah that had been burning a hole in his phone since morning. Meet me tonight, 8 p.m. Lobby. We need to talk about Ethan. It was 7:45 now. Jack took a swig of the beer, some local IPA, bitter as hell, and tried to steady himself. Sarah showing up after 3 years was a gut punch he hadn't seen coming. And Grace? She'd been on his mind since the zoo, that Costa Rica bombshell from Hannah hanging between them like a live wire. He'd texted her again after they parted ways. Let me know what you decide. No pressure. But still nothing. Radio silence. The suite's glass door slid open behind him, and he turned, expecting the hotel staff with the extra pillows he'd ordered. Instead, Sarah Evans stepped out, tall, blonde, and sharp-edged, like she'd walked straight out of a memory he'd buried deep. She wore a black blazer and jeans, her hair pulled back tight, but her eyes, those same blue eyes Ethan had, were softer than he remembered, rimmed with something like regret. You're early, Jack said, his voice flat. He set the beer on the railing, crossing his arms. I didn't want to wait, Sarah said, stepping closer. Her heels clicked on the tile, a sound that grated on his nerves. I saw the light on. Figured you'd be up. What do you want, Sarah? He asked, cutting to it. 3 years, not a word, and now you're here? She flinched, just barely, but he caught it. I know I screwed up, she said, her voice low. Leaving you, leaving Ethan. I wasn't okay back then, Jack. After he was born, I couldn't breathe. The crying, the sleepless nights. It broke me. Jack's jaw clenched. Postpartum depression's a real thing. I get that. But you didn't just leave. You ghosted us. No calls, no letters, nothing. I had to figure out how to be a dad overnight while you were God knows where. I was a mess, she said, her eyes glistening. I checked into a clinic upstate. Took me 2 years to get my head straight. I'm not here to make excuses. I just want a chance to know him. He stared at her, the words sinking in like lead. Part of him wanted to believe her, wanted to think she'd had a reason beyond selfishness. But the other part, the part that spent 3 years building a life for Ethan alone, wasn't buying it. "You don't get to waltz back in and play mom now," he said. "He doesn't even know you." "I know," she said, stepping closer. "But I'm better now. I've got a job, a place in Tampa. I'm not asking for custody. Not yet. Just time with him. Please, Jack." Before he could answer, a knock came at the suite's main door, sharp, insistent. Jack frowned. "Hold that thought," he muttered, brushing past her. He swung the door open, and there stood Grace Miller, her hair damp from the evening humidity, her tote slung over her shoulder. She looked, damn it, beautiful, even with that nervous tap-tap-tap of her fingers against her jeans. "Grace," he said, caught off guard. "Hey." "Hey," she said, her eyes flicking past him to Sarah. I wanted to talk, but if this is a bad time..." "No," he said, too quick. "It's fine. Come in." She hesitated, then stepped inside, the tension thickening as Sarah turned to face her. "Who's this?" Sarah asked, her tone cool. "Grace Miller," Grace said, offering a tight smile. "I'm a friend." "Friend," Sarah repeated, her eyes narrowing. "Right." Jack rubbed his temple, feeling the headache coming on. "Sarah's Ethan's mom," he said to Grace. "She's just..." "Back," Sarah finished, crossing her arms. "I'm back." Grace's face shifted, surprise, then something harder. "Oh," she said, her voice quiet. "I didn't know." "Yeah, well, neither did I until yesterday," Jack said, trying to keep it light. "Look, Sarah, we'll talk tomorrow. Ethan's asleep." "I deserve a second chance, Jack," Sarah cut in, her voice rising. "I was broken then. I'm not now." Grace took a step back, her tote slipping slightly. "I should go," she said. "This is a lot." "Grace, wait," Jack said, reaching for her arm. "You don't have to..." But she pulled away, her eyes locking on his. "I heard her," she said, nodding toward Sarah. "Second chances. Sounds like you've got history to sort out." "It's not like that," he said, desperation creeping in. "She's not..." "I thought this was real," Grace interrupted, her voice cracking. "You, Ethan, me, I thought it was something, but maybe I was wrong." She turned to Sarah. "Good luck with him. He's a good guy." "Grace," Jack started, but she was already moving, the door clicking shut behind her. He stood there frozen, the sound echoing like a gunshot. Sarah exhaled, running a hand through her hair. "Well, that was dramatic." "Shut up," Jack snapped, rounding on her. "You don't get to judge. You don't know what she means to us." "Us?" Sarah said, raising an eyebrow. "You and Ethan? Or just you?" Jack didn't answer. He grabbed his phone, dialing Grace's number as he stormed back to the balcony. It went straight to voicemail. "Damn it," he muttered, slamming the phone down next to the beer bottle. Sarah followed him out, her voice softer now. "I'm not here to mess up your life, Jack. I just want to see my son." "He's not your son," he said, his voice low and hard. "Not anymore. You gave that up." She flinched again, deeper this time. "I know I hurt you," she said. "But I'm asking, begging for a chance to fix it." Jack stared out at the ocean, the waves crashing in the dark. His head was a mess. Sarah's plea, Grace's exit, Ethan sleeping just feet away. I need you to go, he said finally. We'll talk tomorrow, but not now. Sarah nodded, her shoulders slumping. Okay, she said, and left without another word. The suite fell silent, save for the hum of the AC and the distant waves. Jack sank into a chair, his beer forgotten, and buried his face in his hands. Grace was gone, really gone this time, and Sarah was back, stirring up ghosts he thought were dead. Ethan's voice broke the quiet, small and sleepy from the bedroom. Daddy? Jack stood, forcing his legs to move. Ethan was sitting up, rubbing his eyes, Buddy dangling from one hand. Miss Gracie, he mumbled. She had to go, Bud, Jack said, sitting on the bed and pulling him close. But we're okay. Just you and me. Ethan's lip trembled. I want Miss Gracie, he said, tears welling up. She's my friend. I know, Jack said, his throat tight. Me too. Ethan cried then, soft and broken, and Jack held him, rocking him back to sleep. When the kid finally drifted off, Jack grabbed his phone again. No calls, no texts, just silence. He opened the camera app, hitting record, and let Ethan's sleepy face fill the frame. Miss Gracie, he said, his voice rough. It's us. Ethan misses you. I miss you. I don't know what you're thinking right now, but this thing with Sarah, it's not what it looks like. You're not wrong about us. Please, just call me back. He sent the video, his hands shaking, and leaned back against the headboard. The night stretched out, endless and empty, and for the first time in years, Jack felt like he'd lost everything that mattered. Holy crap, that was intense. Grace is out, Sarah's in, and Jack's hanging by a thread. What's going to happen next? Hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below. Will Grace see the video? Can Sarah really change? Tell me what you think. I'm dying to hear it. The sand at Smathers Beach in Key West was warm under Jack Harper's bare feet, the kind of soft gold that stuck between your toes and made you forget the world for a minute. It was late afternoon, the sun dipping low, casting long shadows from the palm trees lining the shore. Ethan knelt a few feet away, his little hands patting down a lopsided sandcastle, giggling as the waves teased the edges. Jack sat cross-legged beside him, a plastic bucket in one hand, a cold Coke in the other. It had been 3 weeks since that night in Miami, 3 weeks since Grace walked out, since Sarah stirred up the past, since he'd sent that desperate video into the void. He hadn't heard back, not a call, not a text, just silence. Sarah, though, had stuck around, met him the next day at a diner near the hotel. She'd apologized, tears streaking her mascara, and said she wouldn't fight for custody. I'm not ready, she'd admitted, her voice small. I thought I was, but seeing him, I can't undo what I did. Jack had nodded, numb, and let her go. She'd left for Tampa that afternoon, a ghost fading back into the ether. Now, here he was, on a last-minute trip to Key West with Ethan, trying to reset. The kid needed it. After the zoo scare, the tears for Grace, he'd been clingy, quiet. Jack needed it too. Seattle loomed on the horizon, board meetings, deadlines, but for a few more days, it was just them, the beach, and the hum of the ocean. Daddy, look! Ethan said, pointing at his sandcastle. It's got a tower. Nice one, bud, Jack said, forcing a smile. Needs a moat, though. Keep the bad guys out. Ethan grabbed a stick, digging a sloppy trench around the base. Jack watched, his mind drifting. He'd replayed that night 100 times. Grace's face when she saw Sarah, the way she'd said, "I thought this was real," like a knife to his gut. He'd screwed up, letting her walk away without a fight. And Costa Rica? She was probably halfway across the world by now, teaching kids in some jungle school, gone for good. A shadow fell over the sand, and Jack glanced up, squinting. A figure stood against the sun, jeans, a faded t-shirt, a familiar tote slung over one shoulder. His heart stopped. "Grace?" he said, scrambling to his feet. She stepped closer, her sneakers sinking into the sand, her hazel eyes catching the light. "Hey," she said, her voice soft but steady. "Got room for one more?" Ethan's head snapped up. "Miss Gracie!" he yelled, launching himself at her legs. She laughed, dropping to her knees to hug him, sand flying everywhere. "Hey, little man," she said, ruffling his hair. "Missed you." Jack stood there, coke dripping onto his hand, his brain short-circuiting. "You're here," he said, dumb as hell, but all he could manage. "I thought Costa Rica." "I didn't go," she said, standing, Ethan still clinging to her. "Turned it down." "Why?" he asked, his voice rough. She hesitated, tapping her fingers against her tote, a nervous tick he'd memorized. "I saw your video," she said finally. "You and Ethan. I watched it, I don't know, 50 times. Kept trying to call you back, but I couldn't figure out what to say." Jack swallowed, his throat tight. "You didn't have to say anything. Just, God, Grace, I thought I'd lost you." "You almost did," she said, her smile small but real. "I was halfway to the airport when I stopped. Sat in my car for an hour crying like an idiot. I was scared, Jack. Scared of this. Of us." "Scared of what?" he asked, stepping closer. "Of it being too good," she said, her voice breaking. "My mom, she fell for a guy once. Thought he was it. Then he left, and she never got over it. I grew up watching her break, over and over. I didn't want that for me, or for Ethan." Jack reached for her hand, his fingers brushing hers. "I'm not him," he said. "I'm not going anywhere." She let him take her hand, her grip tentative but warm. "I know," she said. "That's why I'm here." Ethan tugged at her shirt, oblivious to the weight of it all. "Miss Gracie, help me," he said, pointing at the sandcastle. "It's falling." Grace laughed, wiping her eyes with her sleeve. "All right, bud, let's fix it." They knelt together, Ethan babbling about towers and moats while Grace packed sand into the bucket. Jack watched, his chest loosening for the first time in weeks. But then footsteps crunched behind him, and he turned. Sarah, standing there in a sundress, her blonde hair whipping in the breeze. "Jack," she said, her voice quiet. "Can we talk?" Grace froze, her hand hovering over the sand. Jack stood, his stomach twisting. "Sarah," he said, keeping his tone even. "What are you doing here?" I was in Key West for work, she said, glancing at Ethan. Saw you from the boardwalk. I owe you an apology. Both of you. Jack crossed his arms. You said your piece in Miami. I know, she said, stepping closer, but I didn't say it right. I'm not here to take him, Jack. I'm not ready to be his mom, not the way he needs. I just wanted you to know I'm sorry for leaving, for showing up like that. I won't mess with your life again. Jack studied her, the regret in her eyes, the way her hands twisted together. Okay, he said finally. I appreciate it. Sarah nodded, her gaze shifting to Grace. You're good for them, she said. I can see it. Grace blinked, then offered a small smile. Thanks. Sarah turned to go, but Ethan piped up. Lady, you like sandcastles? She paused, surprised, then crouched down. Yeah, kiddo, she said. Yours is pretty cool. Ethan beamed, and for a second, Sarah smiled, a real one. Then she stood, gave Jack a nod, and walked off down the beach, her figure shrinking against the horizon. Jack exhaled, the tension draining out of him. Grace stood, brushing sand off her knees. That was unexpected, she said. Yeah, he said, running a hand through his hair. You okay? She nodded, stepping closer. I'm more scared of losing you two than anything else, she said, her voice low. That's what I figured out in that damn car. Jack's heart thudded. He reached into his pocket, pulling out a small box he'd been carrying since Miami. A simple silver ring, no flash, just a single diamond that caught the fading light. Then stay, he said, opening it. For real. Grace's breath hitched, her eyes wide. Jack. I love you, he said, the words spilling out raw and unpolished. I love how you make Ethan laugh, how you make me feel like I'm not just some suit running a company. I love you, Grace, exactly as you are. Marry me. Tears welled up, but she laughed. A shaky, beautiful sound. You're crazy, she said, her fingers trembling as she touched the ring. Crazy about you, he said, grinning. Say yes. Yes, she whispered, and he slid the ring onto her finger, pulling her into his arms. She fit there, perfect and real, her lips finding his in a kiss that tasted like salt and promise. Ethan cheered, jumping up and down, sand flying. Miss Gracie's staying, he yelled, tackling their legs. They laughed, falling into the sand together, Ethan piling on top. The sun sank lower, the waves rolled in, and for the first time in forever, Jack felt whole. Later, as the sky turned purple, they sat on a blanket, Ethan between them, munching on a PB&J. Where are we going next? He asked, his mouth full. Grace glanced at Jack, her ring glinting. How about a family trip? She said. Somewhere with dinosaurs and planes. Disney World, Ethan shouted, throwing his arms up. Jack chuckled, pulling them both close. Disney World it is. The night settled around them, warm and quiet, the future stretching out like the ocean, big, messy, and theirs. And there you have it, Jack, Grace, and Ethan, a family against all odds. What a ride, right? Hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below. Did the ending hit you in the feels? What's your favorite moment from their story? Let me know, I'd love to hear it.